call to order the CUSD 201 School Board Meeting, September 27, 2022. Roll call, please.
Leah Conover.
Here.
Kevin Marin.
Here.
Laura Coyle.
Here.
Jessica Redonio.
Here.
Carlos Avia.
Here.
Angela Steckity.
Here.
Adina Hoover.
Here. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel issues, student discipline, collective bargaining, and to review closed session minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Redonio.
Yes.
Mr. Avia.
Yes.
Mr. Marin.
Yes.
Ms. Steckity.
Yes.
Ms. Conover.
Yes.
Ms. Coyle.
Yes.
Ms. Hoover.
Yes.
There's just one.
Okay, we're returning from closed session. As a reminder, we do have set a public hearing at 7 p.m. If we do come to that before that time, we'll continue beyond that on the agenda and then return back to adhere to that public hearing session. So at this time, we'll continue with the approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the September 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the September 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We will proceed to public comment. Do we have any? Okay. Okay, we don't have any public comment at this time. Again, we will return to the public hearing at 7. So we will move to the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. 1, personnel recommendations. Kim Corso Daly, Student Services Secretary. Robert Slowick, Wrestling Volunteer, WJHS. 2, approval of the September 2022 expenditure report. 3, ratification of August 2022 regular payroll. And 4, approval of student tour, WHS.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
And we'll move along to the information discussion with IASB update. We have a handout.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Nice to be back with you. Hope everything's going well with you and for your school year so far. I think that you were provided this yesterday electronically, so I just want to hit some highlights and then answer any questions and let you know where we are in the process, kind of where we are and where we're going. So first of all, you see on the front page that there were a total of 85 individuals who participated in the 6 focus groups, and 41 were staff members, 35 were parents and community, and 9 were in the administrative group.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask, how does this compare to other communities when you've had these?
I would say very, very comparable.
Okay.
Probably more parents and community than we often get.
Good.
And again, I think you have done an exceptional job with getting the word out and the large banners that I saw at different places around town.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah,
to
no,
interrupt.
no, please jump in at any time. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the groups before we started, and one is that everyone, all 6 of them, the participants were very, very engaged, very thoughtful and reflective, and very appreciative for the opportunity that the board gave them. And I think with all of them, I made a note to say, thank a board member if you see one for this opportunity. It's not a piece that's standard, but it was very important to the board that they hear a lot from, as much as possible, from the stakeholders, and they appreciated that. Thank you also, Shannon and Kevin. You were there to greet me, make sure I knew where I was going and what was happening at all 6 of the groups, and that's a little unusual too. I usually am floundering around trying to find where's the gym or the cafetorium, and you beat me there to all of them, so thank you so much I know that was additional, one additional thing in your day. If you turn to what would be the second page, so really we just anchor the conversation around 4 questions. And those are springboards, and the first one is, what is unique? We ask the individuals to take a moment. So with all 4 of these questions, the participants took some quiet moments to answer just themselves what they thought. And then with larger groups, they talked and buzzed at their table and then kind of reported out themes. And with smaller groups, we didn't do a buzz at the table, we just talked. But I collected all of the forms and tallied and coded all of the answers. Because if there were a group like this and maybe 4 or 5 people really wanted to offer and had a lot to share and a lot to say, and maybe there were other individuals who had similar or different ideas, but they didn't speak up, I wanted everything coded and counted. So I collected everything from them. And it was really interesting and great, I would say, that there were so many themes and answers and topics that went across all 3 groups. And so after the second one, and then the third one, and then the fourth one, I just started really hearing reoccurring themes. So with the first one, what is unique, there were 4 answers that really cut across or went across all 3 groups. And the first one was the size and the makeup of your district, that it's small, that it's unit, but also more than that, sort of the advantages to that. We know children pre-K through 12, the articulation across the buildings, kind of the advantages to that. Second one was the united family feel. I kept hearing words like close-knit, tight-knit, feels like a family, feels like a community. That was the second one. The third theme across all of them, I tried to do some color coding, and there wasn't enough highlight colors, so then I did some different fonts. Hopefully you can figure out there was not a system like green doesn't mean anything different than red. They were just colors to sort of help your eyes move across the columns. The third one was opportunities for students. So lots of talk about things ranging from academic opportunities like AP courses to extracurriculars, but just lots of opportunities for students, richly so, and that students didn't necessarily have to pigeonhole themselves into one track. They said sometimes in larger schools you have to sort of pick, I'm going to be a band kid or I'm going to be a basketball kid, and that's not necessarily true in a smaller district. Third was named the dual language program. Also the diversity of the district, the richness and diversity of the district. I think those were the 4 that went across all 3. There were 2 other topics that went across 2 of the groups, and I guess one of them was the opportunities, and the other one was the grade level centers. Any questions on that one before I move on? And I know you're watching your time for the budget hearing, so just let me know. If we turn to the next page, there was kind of some overlap between 1 and 2, because 1 is what's unique about the district, 2 is what are the points of pride and the strengths of the district. So some things appeared on both lists, but I tried to do my best to put them where the bulk of the answers fell. There were 5 themes that came up that cut across all 3 groups. The first one had to do with staff, and that included teachers, administrators, and support staff. Heard lots of caring, invested, will do anything it takes, dedicated, hardworking. And I want to point out something that's not always true when we do these in all districts. And that was in the staff group, people making a point to compliment administration. And in administration, them making a point to compliment the teachers. And so sometimes what you get is teachers saying, we work really, really hard, we are great, which is great for them to say that about themselves. Nothing wrong with that. But it's just sometimes you hear people talk about their own group and not other groups. And so that was just a nice thing for me to mention to you.
Quick question.
Yes.
To clarify, the numbers on the side in parentheses, what is that?
Oh, thank you very much for asking that. That was the number of answers, responses around that theme that were coded. So 26 people out of the 35 parents had something, had some comment or written statement about staff, about a great staff. Thank you. I should have said that at the outset and forgot to, so thank you for asking that question. The second one that appeared in all 3 groups was essentially pride, which came under lots of talk about awards, honors, achievement. The third one had to do with culture and climate, very positive culture and climate. A couple of groups said it, and that's backed up by data, for example, the 5 Essentials survey. Another one was parents and community. So very supportive community, very supportive and involved parents. And the fifth one was, needing my glasses here to read some of these, the bond and articulation and communication between and among schools. So you can see in one group it was called collaboration between schools, and another one, just the wording might be a little different. There were some themes that came up in two groups. One had to do with your students, amazing students, great hardworking students, and another was trust in the professionals, teacher autonomy, we are not micromanaged, and same thing appeared in the administrator group, trust in and autonomy given to teachers and administrators. If no questions, we'll move on to challenges and issues. And they were asked, what do you think are the challenges or issues the district is facing or will be facing in the next few years that your next superintendent will need to be prepared to lead, handle, or problem solve? And interestingly, there were 6 topics that appeared in all 3 groups. The first one being building infrastructure needs. So maintenance, aging buildings, facilities updates, capital projects, remodeling projects, so all under that umbrella. Second one was essentially money, deficit budgets, financial pressure, many needs, how to do more with less, do we need a referendum, budget for current and future needs. Third one was keeping the district strong and advancing it. So heard a lot of, we really have this positive, great momentum. We want to keep that going and even further advance it. Appears in the middle group as continue to raise the bar, continuous improvement, those kinds of statements. The 1, 2, 3, fourth one that occurred across all 3 groups had to do with sort of post-COVID learning loss, need to increase scores, learning loss and social, emotional, and behavioral needs having to do with post-COVID. And see it also there in the 3rd group. The 5th topic was staffing issues, something we're hearing across the state and across the nation. So everything from making sure we fill retirements with quality people, shortages in all employee groups, shortages finding bus drivers and custodians and teachers, and so just staffing, making sure that staffing at all levels and in all positions, that we can maintain that and fill them as needed. And the last one was diversity, equity, and inclusion. Being aware of, supporting those, increasing and ongoing needs and topics under that. There were a couple of things that appeared in 2 groups, 2 of the 3 groups. One had to do with politically charged issues and laws, so navigating, addressing, advising, and healing from things like CRT, sex ed standards, book bans. That appeared in 2 groups, and another one that appeared in 2 groups was contract negotiations, union relationships, continue positive conversations with the union, things under that umbrella. Oh, also in 2 groups was potential growth with possible new residential development. That appeared in the 1st and 3rd columns. Then if you turn to the 4th page, if you were in charge of employing the next superintendent and you had the final say, what would you be looking for? What characteristics, strengths, traits? And there were 8 similarities, 8 common themes, which was impressive across all 3 groups. First one, communication, and words like transparent, both written and verbal, forthright, transparent, strong communicator, clear and consistent communicator. Second one is the yellow highlight, things that had to do with kind of the humanity, the approachability of the person, so caring, personable, kind, fair, compassion, welcoming, positive, encouraging, those kinds of things. The third one is the pale gray highlight, so visionary, forward-thinking, innovative, and you see that across the other 2 columns. The 4th one was, and this one was quite a theme, it really sort of showed up in a couple of different ways in more than one group, but so I highlighted all of those in that blue color. the ability to elevate the district, so setting expectations and delivering on them. Proven leadership, that their leadership has been demonstrated by results, a record of follow-through and reliability. And again, in the third group, a proven leader. They've facilitated proven school improvement results. They have some excellence that has been recognized through some kind of honor or award. Results-oriented, goal and data-driven. The blue, dark blue highlight has to do with experiences. Several people talked about a robust resume. They've really had some diverse experiences, and again, back to the proven results and accomplishments, having to do with knowledgeable because they've worked in different arenas and perhaps at different levels. And there were things about knowledgeable about special education and school ed law, experience with a similar district, a wide range of experiences. The next one is honesty, ethics, trustworthy.
We'll just do after.
Okay.
Do you need to interrupt? Do we need to do the budget?
No, we can continue and finish this, and then we'll do the
Okay,
budget.
good. We're just about done. One about honesty, ethics, honesty and integrity. That's that one kind of dark blue color. The orange about being able to develop different groups. All of the groups said we want to be mentored, we want to be supported, we want to be and you know, balancing leading and knowing when to delegate, giving autonomy, but also really advancing us. Visibility, investment in the community. We want to see him or her. We want to know they're invested and actively involved in the community. Those were the ones that were in all three groups, and you can see with the green, excuse me, not with the green, with kind of the bright red and then the sort of the purpley berry color were some that appeared in two of the three groups. But I'm going to, in the interest of time, leave you to analyze those yourself. But I did want to say something else before I open it up to any questions and let you move on to the next part of your agenda. As of this evening, 55 individuals have begun applications. That's a large number, and that's a compliment to you. That is the district's reputation. And so this day and age, it's a little bit higher, perhaps, than we get in some searches. Now, all may not submit. They have not all submitted yet. Some have, but at this point, we still have a couple of weeks to go. 55 have started apps. Applications close on 10/11, and I bring the slate, and then colleagues and I will do the screening interviews, finalize the slate, and bring the slate to you to your October 25th, I believe, meeting. So with that, I know you have other business tonight, but any questions that I can answer for you at this time?
Just one quick question. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks for all the work. I know there's a lot of work that goes into compiling this and synthesizing it in the way that we're seeing it here.
Absolutely.
Obviously, we as a board will use this when it comes time for us to do our interviews. How does this work guide the work that you are doing?
Yes, that's a great question. So the folks who are analyzing the applications, we will use it to supplement what you identified as the ideal traits that you're seeking in the person. So we will talk about, this will drive and influence as we're screening, analyzing some of the questions we may ask in the screening interviews. So it will sharpen our lens as we're reading applications and doing screening interviews, as I'm sure it will for you as well. And then it could be a document that you share with the superintendent once named as part of his or her onboarding. Thank you for that question.
So kind of the survey is like your first place to go for the screening of the applicants, and then this kind of helps you drive into a little bit more detail as you're going through?
This into a little more detail, yes. This drives, this dives a little more deeply into some of the questions that you may be asking. So those are additional questions that we will be asking to find out their level of experience and expertise. Other questions?
Should we make this public into our superintendent search page, or there's nothing
You can, this was shared in open session.
identifiable, so,
Nothing identifiable, nobody is identified.
okay.
And it's already on the board doc.
It's on the
correct?
board docs.
It's in board docs, I'm just thinking
Yeah,
of that
yeah,
page,
so
like,
it's
so
not.
people that are.
Okay, sorry.
It's not, okay, so people that are interested in like where we're at with the superintendent search, what, we've got our survey results, you know, to date.
Could be very
kind of that
transparent, here were the
updates.
results of the focus
Yep,
groups.
yep, so that people have like a one place to go, because I don't want people digging through like board docs, trying to search for what day did you have the one thing.
No, just saying if it was public, but it is not public at this time, but if there are no objections to it,
Okay.
we add that to that,
I think it's good.
that website area for the search.
Any other questions? I look forward to seeing you back here then on the 25th. Once applications close, I will send you an email. I can CC others in central office, since we've also been communicating with them. But it will say, applications closed today. Here are the number of people who, total applications that were begun. Here were the number that were actually submitted. And we are starting our screening process.
I did have, sorry, one more question. On the 25th, which is when you bring the slate to us, and we're doing some training that day, correct? You're gonna help us with some interview training and interview
Yes.
prep and whatnot.
Yes.
Is that in open session or closed session?
Closed.
Closed, okay. Because
That
it
is
has
in-
to do with personnel.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Another
Because
question.
I'll be sharing the names and information about the individuals being brought to you, and there's an expectation of privacy until and unless someone makes it to the final round.
Yeah, you said, at the beginning, you said that I think 55 applications have been started. How many have been completed?
I can check before I leave here and tell you
Okay.
how many have been submitted.
Okay.
And there are a number of people who don't submit until the night before,
Right,
because
right.
they want to go over it
Keep
with a
going
fine tooth
over it,
comb.
yeah.
But I'll tell you before I leave, I brought my computer and I logged onto the Wi-Fi, but I didn't.
Well, rather than have you stay around and look up that information, typically, is it a large number of people that start the application and don't finish, or
It
10%, 20%?
I would, I'm hesitant to give a percentage because it so varies, search to search. And I'm sorry, it's hard to say. Right now, if I had to guess, I'm going to make an educated guess that 40-some, if nobody else, nobody else started an application and there were 55, I would say in the 40s probably would.
Thanks. That's
Does that
enough.
help?
That's
Okay,
enough.
ballpark it?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you so much.
Thank
That
you
was
very
so
much.
helpful
Appreciate
for
it.
us. Thank you. Okay, we will return to the public hearing on the 2022-2023 budget. The Board of Education calls the public hearing to order regarding proposed 2022-2023 budget.
Thank you. So tonight I'm going to run through the highlights of the fiscal year 22 and 23 budget. For those who do not know, school districts are mandatory approval of the budget by school code. By adopting the budget, we're able to receive tax dollars and expend those tax dollars on residential and corporate. This budget also serves as a plan for the district administration on spending and revenue, and then also a communication tool for the community, for administration, and the district entirely. So the next slide is tentative versus adoption. So let me see. Oh, excuse me. So, getting a little mixed up. So a little budget timeline. So on July 19th, the board heard the tentative hearing and then approved the tentative budget. On July 20th, the board authorized me to post it on the website and also issue it in the newspaper. On September 7th, we held a finance committee meeting that talked about some changes between the tentative and adopted budget. And tonight we'll go through the hearing and approve the proposed budget. Any questions so far? So the tentative versus proposed budget. Looking at the revenue side, there was a slight change of $400,000 roughly, tentative versus proposed. mainly in the operation and maintenance fund. So between the tentative and proposed budget, the district received more accurate numbers on corporate personal property tax amounts, and we issued, or we're allocating $400,000 to the operation and maintenance fund of that CPPRT funds, which is projected around $800,000. So we're allocating $400,000 to the operation and maintenance fund, which is driving the significant increase from tentative versus proposed. Other than that, it's just updating on state aid, getting more accurate numbers on grants, student fees that were collected. So besides the operation and maintenance fund, there were just slight changes on the revenue side. Any questions? On the expenditure side, we saw a difference of $488,000 tentative versus proposed. In large part was the salary increases getting, an updated on WTA increases, WESPA increases that were approved, in addition to contracts that were signed, such as the TA contract that the board approved for estimated $400,000. That was not in the tentative budget. I added it to the proposed budget tonight. So there were changes on the purchase services side, other objects, and salary benefits drove the large change between tentative and adopted budget. Any questions? So just an overview of the highlights. Again, revenue, we got more accurate numbers for CPPRT revenue from the county. We also got updated on state and federal funding that the district will be receiving. And the district is changing investment strategies going forward, which saw a significant increase in interest revenue generated to the district. The district is projecting and budgeting on the conservative side of the revenue. For example, the district usually gets 98 to 99% of property tax collections. And with the recession in the talks and financial struggles, we're projecting a 96 to 97% collection rate for property taxes. So we're being very conservative on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, increase in personnel that has been discussed in previous board meetings, and going forward, the TA contract services was a big budget line item. The athletic bus, the high school is looking at. A bid opening was held last week. That purchase or that lease discussion was not budgeted in the tentative, so I added that to the proposed budget. Again, those are kind of the overview of highlights on the expenditure side. And we are overestimating on the expenditures, underestimating on the revenue side. Any questions? So the next slide is looking at expenditures, revenues by fund, excluding the self-insurance and Fund 22 or 6122 bonds. So for those who don't know, district is self-funded, but we have an internal Fund 12, which looks at the revenue expenditures for the medical and dental benefits. So that's excluding Fund 12, and then also 2022 bonds, which is Fund 61. Any questions? And then the next slide is looking at fiscal year 23 expenditures by fund, excluding self-insurance and bonds. The district is spending 80% in the education fund, which is mostly salary benefits, which is the biggest expense the district has. Any questions?
So are these proportions typical for other school districts?
Yeah, so a majority of districts, at least in our area, the biggest source of revenue is property taxes and local revenue. On the expenditure side, It is salary and benefits.
Thank you.
And then I wanted to isolate Fund 61 in regards to the budget. So this is strictly looking at the 22 bonds, expenditures, and revenue. The district received $5.7 million in July, which will be budgeted in this fiscal year. And we are projecting about $5 million of capital projects for this HVAC junior high project in this fiscal year. The remaining of the 6.9 expenditures will be paid out in fiscal year 24.
Because that's when it's gonna finish.
Correct.
Yeah.
So most of, they're actually starting work or projecting starting work in October. So October through June, roughly $4.9 million of that project will be spent and paid out, and the remaining of the 6.9 will be spent out in July and August.
Okay, because they're gonna do whatever prep work they possibly can over winter break, spring break, Thanksgiving break,
Correct.
whatever they can. Yeah.
Correct. Correct. And as the months progress, we'll be publishing the drawdown schedule, which looks at projected projects, timelines, equipment, and such forth, which will show the $4.9 million. Any questions? And looking at the entire budget as a whole, including the self-insurance fund of 12 and 22 bonds, Fund 61, there is a deficit of $1.7 million. And when we exclude those two funds and look at the general operating funds, we're looking at a $2 million deficit. And the tentative budget was approved in July, showing a $2 million deficit. It was just a $40,000 difference between that. So no significant changes from tentative to proposed budget. So that was the budget presentation shared in board docs and will be published tomorrow on the website. Will be the budget book that goes into detail on the district in regards to staffing, enrollment. It will show graphs similar to this, in addition to department budgets, looking at account numbers, budget amounts, and historical figures, just being transparent. And that will be posted on the website tomorrow upon approval.
So Anthony, now that you've done this for us for the first time, first of all, thank you. Well done. Very clear. Can you speak a little bit to us about your perceptions of the $2 million deficit in terms of how to approach that moving forward most effectively, what you see maybe as the most significant causes of that, and also is that typical relative to other school districts, or are we unique in having that big of a deficit? Yeah, can you just talk a little bit more about that from your area of expertise?
Yeah, so the budget is projecting conservative on the revenue side. So, you know, in the areas surrounding Westmont, majority of the revenue source comes from property taxes residential. So we don't get enough revenue from corporations. Majority is residential. So that's the norm around this area. And on the expenditure side, to watch for in regards to this $2 million, a large part is staffing. You know, with CPI increases, with negotiations coming up, the district and the Board of Education would have to be conscious of salary and benefits, which drives the majority of the expenditures. And every district around the area who are going through negotiations are in this, you know, troubling time, having CPI above 5%. So it is a struggle, and most districts in the area are facing that just because of CPI and prices on the expenditures are increasing. To fix this deficit is just working with the department heads on seeing what are the needs, what are the wants on the expenditure side in relation to supplies and material, purchase services, and then large part negotiations with salary benefits.
Can you speak?
The fiscal year 22 unaudited numbers, which will be finalized in October and November, do show a surplus. Again, those are unaudited numbers as of June 30th. So once the audit is approved and presented, more accurate numbers of fiscal year 22 will be produced.
That was part of my question, was that, as you stated, the revenue, I believe, or the revenues were conservative. So is there, can you speak to like the buffer, or I guess in your experience, that buffer that you'll hear from, from different people or different side, well, that's conservative, like what, in your, I guess in your experience, if, how that buffer plays into it, or what, is there a percentage you can go by? I know it's hard, we have CPI, we have all these, as we see, like watching TV, just the stocks by themselves, but is there any way you can speak to that?
Yeah, so on the revenue side, it's always best to be conservative. On the expenditure side, we can, majority of it, we can predict on the expenditure side. We have the salary and benefit piece on annual increases. We have benefit approval process on the percent increases. We have contracts that we sign. So the expenditure side is a little bit more accurate. We do have contingencies in place for hires down the road, or a little bit of construction work if the roof caves in. So we have contingencies based on that. On the revenue side, it is tough to predict on what percentage pays property taxes. How much revenue can the federal and state produce and give to the district? So, it's always best practice to be conservative. I do know that the district does receive a high percentage of revenue and, receipts from property taxes, 98 to 99%. But just with the climate and recession and the finances around the country, it is smart to project a decrease.
And to be careful.
Yes, and then on the contrary, looking at investment strategies was kind of a different way to improve the revenue. The district has always looked at 3-month investments on investing in 3 months, mature, go out to another 3 months. And looking at rates, 6 months to 12 months rates are a lot better right now than 3 months. So we do see a projected increase in interest on investments, but that's a small part of the revenue. So again, it's always being conservative. There is no buffer. I would much rather have a buffer on expenditures to weather, worst case scenario than project a buffer for revenues.
Thank you.
Question. Question-y, statement-y. So, do you know, and I understand you may not know this, do you know what percentage we budgeted for of receiving for the tax, for property tax for 21-22 versus what we actually received?
Yeah, so I believe we definitely receive over 100% of budgeted.
Okay.
I can run those numbers on what was projected received, but we received over 100%.
Okay.
And that's historically what has been done. It's always been conservative on the revenue side of property taxes, and we've already received, always received over 100% of budgeted.
Okay. And really, like, my piece of it going towards that, if we tweak down, the revenue down to like a 96%, right? What is that, 2%? Or in previous years, do we typically start at 96% and end at 98%? And I know that you may not know that right off, just off the top of your head. And then just the other piece is, sorry, that 2% tweak down. And I know that we're coming in at a surplus potentially for this year, but there's also a lot of ESSER funds and a whole lot of stuff that's throwing that way off. So if we receive like 98% of our tax revenue, based on my math, is it like $1 million more?
Roughly a
off
little,
of like
yes.
a 30, because we get in 37 million.
$800,000 to $1 million, correct.
Okay, so it still doesn't sell for a $2 million deficit.
Correct.
But it might get us half of the way there, but we have to get that.
Correct, but that goes back to my point of contingencies on the expenditure side. That's estimating, a $400,000 TA contract that the board just signed. That is projecting, hires that the district may need this year. That is projecting, a cost of a transportation bus. It may be coming in less. So we're overestimating on the expenditure side just to be safe. I can't tell you, the budget is a blueprint. It is a projection of the fiscal year. I can't tell you where we will be come June 30th of 2023. But what I can tell you is that, we're doing the best practice that we've always been done, is being revenue conservative and overestimating the expenditures.
Cool. So last thing, just thank you. I know this was a boatload of work, and especially it's your first year putting this together. I know that you worked a ton with the buildings and really understanding all the pieces going on, and we're coming in with a $7 million project on your first year.
It's fun.
You've been really great and super understanding with us, very in our layman terms, and in the finance committee, which again, public, welcome to attend our meetings, but really helpful in kind of teaching us things and helping us to understand this in a lot of different ways. So I appreciate the work. I appreciate the work of the office and all the administrators that it all takes to put this together. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. And I think the next steps would be approving the budget tonight. I will be submitting it to the county and the state tomorrow once approved. All the documents such as the presentation, the budget book, the approved budget form will be posted on the website. And then we use 5CAS for projections. These budget amounts will be uploaded to 5CAS. So come January, when we do projections will show audited fiscal year 22 and these budget amounts.
Just another question, we spoke about the surplus. How much is that due to the atypical year and not having that being because we didn't have to be in the buildings and staffing? Is that?
I mean, historically, we've been seeing a downtrend. Last year, we did receive a lot of funding with COVID, and we did see a significant decrease on transportation costs and outplacement. So I do think going forward, we'll see a downtrend. Last year, we just had
2 years.
Correct, 2 years of fluke with COVID. Do I see that $2 million changing? Yes. Can I say it's a deficit or surplus? I can't tell you that once the auditors are done.
This question's related kind of sorta, and maybe for Kevin more than Anthony or whoever, but the $400,000 for the TA, did we get what we needed out of that?
We've hired 4 so far.
And we budgeted for 6?
For 6, yes, yeah. And right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern to see exactly what the schools need. So then if we don't go to the 6, then we won't expend the entire $400,000.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
And that $400,000 is projecting 6 from start to the last day of school.
Right.
Okay.
So if we do, have to hire someone after winter break, that projection will go down.
Okay.
There's also some trade-off in salary and benefits. We don't pay for benefits on contracted workers, so it's not necessarily a $400,000 extra spend at the end of the day, because we're paying for them differently. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a contracted service rather than a payroll cost.
Yeah.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony.
So I think we finished. There's no additional, or are there any additional comments from the board at this time on the proposed budget? Okay. And at this time, we can open it up. I would like to ask if there's any public comment concerning the proposed 2022-2023 budget. Okay. Then at this time, I declare the public hearing on the proposed 2022-2023 budget closed. And Anthony, you're up again. We're going to move along in our agenda in the information and discussion with presentation of monthly financials.
Yeah, so looking at July, comparing July activity, this is versus fiscal year 23 proposed budget of tonight. So looking at the revenue, on the revenue side, the district received the bond proceeds July 12th. So that was a large part of the revenue for the month of July. Also, the district receives student fees starting in July. So comparing prior year, we're consistent looking at prior year. On the expenditure side, it is the beginning of the school year expenditures. And again, looking at all the expenditures, comparing this year to last year, we are on the same page with percentages. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move along to the presentation of the ISBE salary compensation report.
So, according to school code, districts would need to approve and post salary compensations for certified staff. So, attached is the compensation report for certified staff from 2021 to 2022. Any questions? And this is an annual approval process.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Moving along to the presentation of the IMRF salary compensation report.
Similar to the ISB salary compensation report, ISB in school code requires board districts to approve IMRF individuals who are making $75,000 or more to approve the compensation and post it on the website. So this is looking at 2022, 2023 IMRF individuals who are making $75,000 or more.
Any questions or comments?
I feel like this is a really stupid question, but I'm looking at that document and some of them aren't at 75. Is that with benefits?
Correct.
Oh, got it, okay.
It's total compensation that make up $75,000 or more.
Got it.
I did the same thing. Okay. And now the presentation of salary compensation report for all employees.
Yes, again, this looks at all individuals, IMRF and TRS certified individuals, total compensation report. And this is for 2021 to 2022 salary. Any questions?
Right. No further questions? We'll move
Sorry,
along.
wait, this is available for the public, right?
Yes, so the board would have to review it and then also will be posted on the website
Okay.
tomorrow.
Okay. Move along to GLC metrics.
Okay, so we're in the process of developing our dashboard for the grade level centers so that we can kind of track the progress as we make this transition. And just kind of a reminder of, the why we decided to transition to grade level centers, and it's again for the optimal system and that it's equitable and sustainable. We want to make sure that we're meeting all of our students' social, emotional, educational needs, and then that we're able to use our staffing wisely so that we're able to provide the support that our students need. And for optimal systems, it's strongly aligning the program of the MTSS that used to be RTI for those of us who have been through the process. Dual language students and our ELL learners as well. Interventional enrichment opportunities for students in the core areas of English, language arts, and math. And the program includes building configuration for K-5 learners, curriculum materials, staffing, professional learning and collaboration, and scheduling. Sustainability is being proactive rather than reactive, and that we are not relying on the fluctuations in enrollment. So 1 year we have to shift staff to one building if there's an increase, and we're able to make sure that we can accommodate those increases as we see those. And then in terms of how are we going to measure our progress, we're looking at our iReady, ELA, and math, our benchmark assessment system, Fontes and Purnell, and then the Illinois Assessment Readiness, which is the annual state test that we take every spring, and then engagement of experiential inquiry-based learning, standards-based report card analysis, and the Illinois 5 Essentials. So far, if we look at the annual state test, the state hasn't released the 2022 scores yet for public, and so probably in the next week, we'll get a preview. And then in October, the end of October is when the school report cards becomes public, and then school district can begin sharing that data. But in 2019, you can see for each of the grade levels what the percent meeting or exceeding was. And then in 2021, the meets and exceeds, and then our district average that we had. And so the goal is that we want to make sure that we're at least hitting our district average, but then we obviously want to see those scores increasing as a result in being in grade level centers. And then we can also disaggregate that data if we want to. So we can break out our students who have IEPs, our ELL learners, our low income students as well. And then in math, the data as well that we've had so far. 2020, the assessment wasn't given. That was the spring COVID-19, March, if we all remember that. And so there was no state assessment. They waived it. And so we have 19 and 21.
Real quick, Kevin,
Yeah.
if I'm understanding this correctly, the grade 3, 2019, 56.3%. Is that the same students grade 5, 2021?
Yes, that would be
Okay.
the same students.
Okay, cool. So it's not,
Right.
yeah. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
I have another question about, because all these read sort of the same way across. So 2019 math percentage meet or exceed by grade level. 2021, same thing. What is the district average?
So if you average those 2 years, you know, so.
I understand now.
Right,
Thank you.
so then when we get 22, we'll redo the average.
So it's the average across the two
Right,
evaluation periods, we'll call them that.
right, with COVID throwing in the middle of it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Okay.
that's what's making this hard, you know, is because you have COVID-19 who, you know, that the schools went on remote March of 2020, and then for most of 2021, we were still remote before we shifted to hybrid. So, yeah.
So it says we're using the average because we don't have the historical trend data yet, and then we'll use trend data?
The average is kind of, it helps us right with the historical trend data. The other thing too is the IAR is a relatively new assessment.
Okay.
And so that's the other thing that hinders us. The state has changed the assessment a couple times. And so it is difficult to get that trend data.
Okay, yeah, I guess I just am not used to seeing average.
So
For a
like
couple
next
of
year,
years.
would this have like the 2019 column, the 2021 column, and then also a 2022
Right.
column, and then also an average column?
Right.
And then kind of moving forward, it's always like 3 years in an average? That's what we can kind
Well,
of
we
expect?
can
or-
probably go out, I would say 5 years. You know,
Okay.
you're looking at 5 years. And we'll be able to do that as well. There's talk, the state's looking at the assessment again. So we're not sure.
And we only started using iReady in 2019?
Well, you'll see for all of our students, yeah, 2019.
Because we didn't have a
Oh.
lot of iReady data pre-COVID, if I
Right,
recall.
Right.
So-
Originally, we were just doing iReady with certain groups of students, and then we decided to use this as an assessment for all our students. We got away from map testing. For the longest time, we were using map. So we had several years of map data. But then we felt that iReady was a better assessment, and so then we shifted away from map and went to iReady, so we're starting to develop that trend data.
So Kevin, just to be clear though with this, are we saying that our baseline is the district average, or are we saying that our baseline is 2021? Like, if we look to what should we expect in 2022, are we expecting better than 2021 or better than the average of those 2 years?
We should definitely see better than 2021, and then our goal is to be better than the average.
Okay.
You know, and if we really exceed, our stretch goal would be better than 2019.
Right. But to have that happen in a year is probably unrealistic. So
That's why
just
it's
to
a
set our
stretch goal.
expectations.
Right.
The minimal expectation is that we are better than 2021.
Right.
In 2022.
Right.
And then as the years progress, ideally, we get back to 2019 and above. Is that
Yep.
fair?
Right.
Okay.
And where does all this fall in regards to the state also? Or is it, I know it's not, I know the state doesn't do I-ready. I'm sorry. I know the state doesn't do I-ready, but for the IAR, the whole state does IAR, so, like, where, or.
How do we
maybe
use
what I'm-
that?
Maybe what I'm asking for is to see the state data
Right.
on here
And we
in the
can,
future
yeah,
also.
we can do that as well, what the state average was for each of the years. We can do that as well.
Is that usually printed on the student's, like,
On the s-
the report, it shows the state?
It is included in the school report card, so we can add that data to this, no problem.
Yeah. I mean, it would just be nice, because you look at
Right.
something and you see 34%, but if the state's at 25,
Right.
which if I recall, the state, we are above the state in everything from the most recent one, but, it just gives another layer of information
Right.
to understand.
Right. And then if we do look at the iReady data, now, we did give iReady all 3 years. And 2019, 2020 is again when we decided to use it with all of our students. And so you can see that and this is kindergarten reading. And so what you do with iReady, all the students take an assessment in the fall. And then you can determine what their typical growth will be based upon that. And then you also have a stretch goal as well. So, and then the percent improved placement, iReady determines if a student, for instance, for kindergarten, is below grade level, if they're early kindergarten, if they're kindergarten, or if they're, first grade, And so then that they're given a placement at the beginning of the year, and then the percent improvement are those students who improved upon their placement. So at the end of the year, in spring of, in this case, 20, how many students moved and improved beyond that? So they may have came in at kindergarten, early kindergarten, but 70% were at, kindergarten or first grade. And so you can kind of see, and this kind of shows you, we were in session 3/4 of a year, 2019, 2020. And so you can kind of see where the data is at. 2021, again, that was start remote, shifted to hybrid. And you can see where we're at. And then 21, 22 last year, we were back full-time. And so you can see those percentages are bouncing back now that we've been, and so that's encouraging for the IAR as well. And so then you can take a look at kindergarten math as well. I have to get the data. When I looked at the report, the data wasn't there. Tim said yes, that kindergarten last year did take the math assessment. So it's just a matter of seeing where that data is at so that we can include that data. And then for first grade, you can see what's transpired over the last 3 years in reading. And then also in math, you can see the trend there with the math as well. And then we have our second grade students. The nice thing about iReady, we get data K through 5. IAR, it's only 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that you get data. So the IAR gives us data on all of our students. And then when we look at second grade math, and then our 3rd grade, and then our 3rd grade in math, and then our 4th grade in reading, and then our 4th grade in math, and then our 5th grade in reading, and then our 5th grade in math. And we can disaggregate this data. We can, look at students' IEPs, ELL. We can take a look at dual language classes versus the monolingual classes, and the performance as well. So we can disaggregate all the data. And then we can also do cohorts as well. So looking at our 5th graders, they would have taken it their first time in 3rd grade. So you can look at 3, 4, 5, and look at the cohorts that way. We're also working on the Fountains and Pinnell reading data. Right now, the buildings are compiling the data for the last 3 years and creating their dashboard. We're breaking out, again, monolingual, dual language. And then what we'll be able to do then is, again, the percents of students who are at grade level, and then also their trajectory, where we see them being at the end of a given school year. And so then we'll include that data as well. Currently, they have the monolingual classes done. The dual language classes are working on their data. And then we'll be adding that to our data as well.
So I thank you for this. I feel like the student achievement data when we're talking about grade level centers is probably the most important data for sure. And I appreciate you mentioning disaggregating the data, because when we talked about the why, it was about equity in learning, and I think that we have to have that in order to make sure we're actually addressing that. And then I'm just looking at the memo, the board memo, and wondering, I think this is a great start, but I would personally love to see just some other metrics, like, and maybe also wondering what the other metrics are for making sure that we are addressing or improving the social and emotional needs, programming, and then it says at the bottom, student and stakeholder engagement. Like, how are we measuring that?
We're utilizing the 5 Essentials survey for
great,
that.
okay. I feel like
So-
I've asked this question before and gotten that answer before.
It's like split up
Thank you.
from one page to the next.
Right.
The 5 essentials is on there, but it's
Oh, I
like,
just need
it
to keep
is-
scrolling.
It's on the, no, it's like, there's a
Happens
page
when we
break
wear
there,
cozy
and it makes
clothes.
it look weird.
So we're currently pulling the data. The tough thing with the 5 Essentials, 4th and 5th graders take the 5 Essentials, so you can get their feedback.
Yeah.
But it's tracking down, when you look at the state responses, it's tracking down their responses, the student responses. With the high school and the junior high, they're very easy to find, the student responses. But in the elementary one, it's more difficult, and so we're pulling that data out.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
That's it. That answers that question.
Okay.
I'm assuming the kindergarten and first graders don't do the.
No,
They would need a lot
but we
of
can
help
look
with
at
that.
other things
Is
with
there
those
something
students.
else?
Right.
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
I mean,
Is that was something with engagement, you're saying, like, the engagement and how often they're taking those opportunities? I know we really want to get into that a little bit in the next
right,
session, but.
right.
When is the 5 Essentials survey?
It's given every spring. Usually it starts, I think, in February.
They do a big push at parent-teacher conferences
Yeah.
always.
I think it opens in February, and then it's open for a few weeks.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to, I was a little bit surprised. I was not surprised by like the kindergarten and the first grade numbers, because, yeah. I mean, like the like wave of kindergarten and first graders. And also, I remember there being a factor of, a parent factor with a lot of the iReady being done at home,
Right.
Especially that 2020 year.
Right.
With the youngest ones that, couldn't read yet. So I remember that, but I was pleasantly surprised to see as the ages especially got younger, as you started to see where kids are, switching from that being read to learn to reading to learn on their own, seeing some of our last year's numbers better than the 2019-2020 numbers. So, 2019-2020, we ended the year remote, but we had the majority of the year in person.
Right.
And the exact opposite, 21-22, we had the majority of the year remote and ended the year in person. And to see some of those numbers, especially not just bounce back from 1920 or 2021, which was the definite, valley there, not just bounce back, but some of them be even higher than 1920, was surprising in a super positive way.
Right.
Not 1920.
Whew. Let's never talk about it again. And I look forward to seeing some like dashboardy type stuff.
Right.
I love going to the Illinois report card, the one that ISBE puts together. They have a really nice dashboard system just of like, even just to find information about districts,
Right.
like neighboring districts and whatever, but it's very it's very easy to interact with. And I think our parents and our stakeholders would appreciate having something that's kind of that easy to understand, you know, and interact with, maybe.
Quick question, so this is a good start to
Right.
putting together a dashboard. When do you expect us to see another take on this and incorporating maybe last year's 5 essentials
Right.
or any of the other elements of the dashboard that you plan on adding?
Typically, the state report card comes out, as I said, it becomes public the end of October. And so then November, usually, I come to the board with kind of like our state of the district. And so then I would
Maybe include it in
anticipate,
that.
yeah, anticipate updating this and then adding some other elements.
Okay, thanks.
And then is it once again in the spring with the 5 essentials data?
Right.
Is that data at the end of the spring or the next part of the school?
I think this year, you're relying on the State Board of Ed to give you back the data. I think this year, right at the end of the school year,
Yeah.
beginning of summer,
We had it in like June.
yeah, it became available.
Great.
Thanks, Kevin.
If there are no objections, we'll move to the strategic plan update.
Good evening, Board of Education, Superintendent Carey. The presentation that you're going to see is going to relate to some of the data that you just saw. So it's important for us to, as a reminder, I'm going to show the 3 elements of the portrait of a graduate, because that's kind of the basis and the foundation for our strategic plan. So as a reminder, the portrait of the graduate guides our strategic plan, and it's the 3 pillars focus on the skills necessary to prepare our students for the future. And so operationalizing our strategic plan holds the district and the community accountable, and it ensures that we're teaching and preparing our students for their future, and this will articulate our strategic plan by showing how it is we're going to measure different elements of it. So hopefully this information you'll find useful. So the agenda would be to review those 3 pillars and then to articulate how the portrait graduate is operationalized and measured. So that's, once again, the portrait of a graduate serves as the North Star for the strategic plan, and it guides us in how we help our students be prepared for the future. The first pillar is student agency. Student agency relates to how students influence their own learning, how they take ownership of their own learning, and how the experiences that we provide for them are connected to real world and connected to their students' own interests and their own choice and voice in their experiences. So when we talk about measuring student agency, we are addressing the method in which we are grading the students' work and the evidence of how they're meeting their goals. So over and above or outside of the assessments that we give students, like the benchmark assessments, there's the day-to-day work that we're doing and the evidence of student learning and how we're seeing their growth toward the achievement goals and the learning targets. That's what we mean by evidence-based grading practices. So it's not just the ABC, it's the sort of the progression toward learning. And as students progress toward their learning, we actually talk about and we use language like, what goals do you have? What skills do you need to get to grade level? So that evidence-based grading practices, that you'll see that repeated in each of the 3 pillars. Also, specific 5 essential questions can be mapped to the individual pillars. So we presented, or we worked on a chart as an admin team, and there are specific questions that relate to each one of those student agency, academics, and higher order thinking. So you'll see that repeated throughout as well. We measure student agency by things like participation in school and community activities, school programs, students work with the SEL programs that we have. For example, in the elementary, we use the program called Second Step, and there's actually assessments and scores that we can keep to kind of show students' progress toward those particular learning objectives. And in the junior high, the work that they do in STAR that addresses social emotional skills and activities or opportunities at the high school, even like, for example, Take Care Day. And some of these activities are part of our 5-year plan, so they may not be part of our children's experience right now, but they will be evident within our 5-year plan. Once again, the measuring student agency data is done through health learning standards. You know, we're talking about physical fitness and lifestyle and how students develop their social, emotional, physical health. And the standards and those SEL standards, we are actually measuring. The elementary report card, for example, actually reports on student behavior and regulating their social, emotional behavior and how they manage themselves and responsible decision making. So those kinds of metrics can be used to measure student data. And once again, our dual language program is included in all of this. So students across all of our learning experiences. The next pillar is the academics, and we're really focused on, with our strategic plan, we're really focused on literacy, all elements of literacy, and we want to ensure that our students have access to digital tools to prepare them to be computer literate and technology literate as they're engaging in their learning experiences. So the measuring those academics, and you kind of reviewed sort of those benchmark assessments and district level assessments as well as state assessments, and know that data is useful. But in addition to those kinds of big assessments, we also utilize our curriculum aligned and common assessments that we use during PLCs and our curriculum based assessments. Then once again, because we want our students to engage in higher order thinking and sort of technical skills and communication, all elements of communication, we also want to feature the fact that we provide students opportunities that focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and even as far down as our kindergarten and first graders with the experiences that they have in the innovation station that supports our students' communication skills and their literacy around technology as well. I included the equity audit as well because that relates to academics, and that relates to the way students communicate and understand other points of view, developing empathy, and the way that students engage in their academics. And the last pillar of our Portrait of Graduate is focusing on higher order thinking, which is preparing our students for the future in a ever-expanding world and to succeed in today's workplace. Young people need more than just basic literacy and math. We have to prepare them with experiences that develop problem solving and critical thinking. So this really is something that we're very committed to, and evident by the way we're providing experiences for our students, including, once again, we're not measuring rote learning in our core content area. We're measuring you know, project-based learning, we're measuring how students produce content and not just sort of consume media, but how it is that they produce evidence of their learning and how we can see through their thinking and that crossover with other elements of how we are assessing. We're also featuring the makerspace and those kinds of experiences. So hopefully that's provided some sort of overview about how we measure, what we're expecting to see in terms of our measurement of our portrait of a graduate. And so looking forward to your questions.
Nadine, that was really great. Thank you. Do we have going back to the baseline question, do we have a baseline for most of the areas of metrics that you presented so that as we get into the strategic plan, we'll be able to, sort of show the progression?
With regard to academics, it relates a lot to sort of those metrics could be the benchmark data and benchmark assessments and the state assessments. The strategic plan is a roadmap for us to where we're headed. So, and what our commitments are to provide for our students within the next 5 years. The kind of data that we're talking about in terms of like experiences and how students respond to the world around them, it's first of all, there's no real good assessment to really test higher order thinking.
Right.
So we have to do that in sort of those kind of soft ways, like the experiences that we provide for students and the projects that we're engaged in. So in terms of baseline data, like the number of opportunities that we give our students may not be a measurable element. And, I think one of the big sort of challenges in education is how is it that we measure things like empathy, higher order thinking, and the claim that we're kind of making is that really what we want is we are committed to providing opportunities. So baseline data for example, with regard to student agency, could we measure discipline or referrals? Well, that does relate to
Sure.
student agency, but there's a lot of other factors.
Right, it's not like a one-to-one correlation.
Right. So the strategic plan helps us move to the future and helps us and gives us a roadmap and what we want, where we want to see our district moving toward, and what we represent and what we want for our students. But in terms of measuring, like what it was like before and what it will be like when we finish, a lot of it really relates to whether or not we have completed those action steps in the strategic plan. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we look forward to seeing.
Yeah.
Because it's not, we've talked about this in our meetings and focus groups, but that's a start, I think, to see the engagement. So this is our roadmap where, we are here. We want to see like the engagement or how many projects were offered this year. And that's our baseline. So it's something I would like to see, like, okay, we have our map, we work, this is amazing because I think it's plain language. I think it shows what our goals are, and is being innovative and figuring out how do we look at where we are. So yes, in activities with higher order thinking. We can't necessarily measure that student, but we can look at how many activities we have. And then the following year, we can look at, this is the engagement like we look at summer school. Like we don't necessarily have a grade for summer school, but we can look at how well we're doing with engaging students in that. So that's something I would like to see, or these are the number of activities we have. And that may even be a grade for us. Maybe the activity wasn't good and you're not engaging, but.
Well, that's a really good way to look at it. I was thinking in terms of like the action plan and all of those steps those actionable steps that we articulated in the action step, like this is what we want to do and this is where we're at so far. that helps articulate our progress. And then for example, we didn't have an innovation station before.
Yes.
So we didn't make a concerted effort, and we were not intentional about providing our students with STEM experiences. And so our roadmap said, this is what we're going to do, and the fact that we have made progress toward that is evident.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so then kind of going back to what you were saying is that to continually be intentional in the types of activities and the learning experiences that we're providing for our students, and to sort of hold those up and say, now where does this fit in, and is this aligned to the strategic plan, and how will this help our students? That's, and we're really proud, we're all really proud of some of the great progress that we're making, and some of those really wonderful experiences that our students are allowed to engage in, so.
Absolutely, and for sure, a lot of it isn't gonna be, like data-wise quantifiable. Where it can be, I think we wanna try to put that rigor to it, but, I think for the board and for the community to have the structure of, and the vision for what things should look like as we progress the strategic plan, I think is really important. So
Yeah,
appreciate all the work that's being done there.
And always going back to where are we, how are we progressing, and where are we at right now, so.
Because I hear great things all the time. And even when we talked about STEM activities and the number of students that showed up, and that's, to me, that's a number.
Well,
yeah, I mean, I'm just saying like different things as the board moves on, and even jumping and we delve into this, that.
We're gonna, and in the spring, we're gonna do our district-wide STEM night again. So that's something new for us, so I'm excited. That's another level of, another evidence of engagement. The state tests don't measure most of that.
Yes.
They don't,
Yes.
you can't ask a question around a child's thinking, like a child's critical thinking or problem solving. So yes, we have to prepare students academically, and we have to make sure that they can, there's evidence of literacy and math skills, because that's essential. You can't, but you're not going to see scores on, and that's a complaint that people in education have been, saying for years. You can't measure those things, so you have to still provide those opportunities. So thank you.
I guess I have another question. Maybe it's
I
for
have a
both
question too.
you and Kevin with the 5 essentials data. Is there any input from alum or previous graduates? Like,
No.
does it go that far?
No, it's only current students, current parents, and current staff.
Are they required to take it, the students during class?
They're not you can't mandate anybody take it, but there is a percentage that in order for your data to be counted by the state, you have to have a certain percentage of your students complete it.
Okay.
And all of our buildings do a nice job of, in a positive way, encouraging students to take it. So we get a pretty high percentage of our students, typically over 90%.
So is there, I mean, I don't want to bombard students with surveys, but since we're saying that our portrait of a graduate is like unique to us, like something along the lines of a senior exit survey, just to get their perception of some of these criteria. I don't know if that would be good or bad.
Well, what's really interesting is that there are questions on the 5 essentials that are directly mapped to elements of the portrait of the graduate.
Okay.
So there are specific questions that the answers would provide for us insight into students' perceptions of their experiences. So,
and I feel like it does kind of get a little bit at some of the higher order thinking stuff, like their perception of rigor and yeah, right.
And yes, and our students provided opportunities for innovation and those types of things. Not super well-versed on the questions in particular, but,
I was gonna say, is there any way we could see a copy of it? Because I know we know the parent questions.
I'm just looking.
Yeah, I can get the board copies of the student questions.
Okay.
And then, I mean, do you think it's safe to say too, though, that if our students are having like the rich social, emotional, empathy, learning those experiences, like that would inherently increase their academic achievement?
well, there's a ton of research that says that before students can achieve academic success, they have to feel safe, they have to be, their needs, their social, their emotional needs, their needs have to be met. We have to address trauma for some of our students. You know, kids come to us with a whole story in terms of what their home life is like and what they've experienced. And so we have to respond to that. There's just a ton of research out there. So we have to always continue to respond to what the student comes with us. And then we're doing direct instruction in terms of managing your behavior and making good decisions. And we're doing it in a way where students can reflect on their own experiences and reflect on their own behavior, and we're asking them to do that. So yes, the hard work that we do to address social emotional learning or status is worth it, because a child cannot learn if they don't feel good about themselves, and that's, you know, it just comes right down to, you know, the hierarchy of needs. So.
Right. I just wanted to mention that because I feel like, you know, there is and there isn't data. I mean, the achievement data is sort of a reflection of that. So even though there's not a concrete measure for
That is true.
social emotional,
Yeah.
if the social emotional well-being increases,
Right.
the achievement increases.
And there's also, in the 5 Essential Survey, students are answering questions about how they feel at school, you know, if they feel safe at school, if they feel welcome, you know, and there's questions about interactions with other students. And so I think you can drill down into there and pull out some of that.
Great. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for putting this together. The higher order thinking skills. When I was at my son's open house, the teacher commented on math how, like, the creative and various ways that the kids were solving and getting the right answer. So it is working for sure, even though it's hard to measure, but it's working.
That's interesting that you say that, because that's one of the frustrations that we had with when new standards were being introduced, you know, 7 or 8 years ago. The focus of the classroom instruction is solving problems in many different ways. We kind of take it for granted because it's just what we do. And so in terms of the academic score, showing the student's ability to solve problems in many different ways and to write and communicate how they solve the problem, that is measured. Come to think of it. So yeah. It's a really good example. Thank you for that. Any other questions?
Thank you, Nadine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to student recognition.
So every year, the schools put together the dates that they invite board members to help at their recognition ceremonies. And so that list, Board President Adina Hoover has copies of it that are being circulated now. And so board members, if there's an event that you would like to attend, you can just sign up for it. The tradition has been that if a board member has a graduate, either at the high school or junior high level, that they kind of have the first opportunity to be the board representative at graduation and help with the distribution of diplomas. After that, any board member is welcome to participate. But once everybody has an opportunity to review the list and sign up for different events, then Shannon will compile that and then share it with the board so that you have an idea of when those events are and a reminder that this is what you signed up for.
Always that reminder email.
Right, so that's circulating around right now. We'll move on to our action items. The first is the adoption of the 2022-2023 budget. So bear with me. The chair will entertain a motion, whereas the Board of Education of Community Unit School District Number 201, County of DuPage, State of Illinois, caused to be prepared in tentative form a budget, and the secretary of this board has made the same conveniently available to public inspection for at least 30 days prior to final action thereon. And whereas a public hearing was held as to such budget on the 27th day of September 2022, notice of said hearing was given at least 30 days prior thereto as required by law, and all other legal requirements have been complied with. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Education of said district as follows. Section 1, the fiscal year of this school district be, and the same hereby is fixed and declared to be beginning July 1, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2023. Section 2, that the following budget containing an estimate of amounts available in each fund separately and of expenditures from each be, and the same is hereby adopted as the budget of this school district for the said fiscal year. And I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Marin,
Yes.
Ms. Steckity,
Yes.
Ms. Conover,
Yes.
Ms. Coyle,
Yes.
Ms. Hoover,
Yes,
Ms. Redonio,
Yes.
Mr. Arabia.
Yes.
motion passes. 2, board action on closed session minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the board action on closed session minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call?
Ms. Steckity,
Yes.
Ms. Conover,
Yes.
Ms. Coyle,
Yes.
Ms. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Redonio,
Yes.
Mr. Avia,
Yes.
Mr. Marin.
Yes.
3, destruction of verbatim closed session minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the destruction of the verbatim closed session minutes from October 2020 through March 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Conover,
Yes.
Ms. Coyle,
Yes.
Ms. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Redonio,
Yes.
Mr. Avia,
Yes.
Mr. Marin,
Yes.
Ms. Steckity.
Yes.
Motion passes. Now to the superintendent report.
So my report next week, the week of October 3rd through 8th, is the homecoming week for our high school. And with this being our 50th year celebration, we're encouraging all of our districts, all of our schools in the district to participate. And so they're all having their Spirit Week next week as well. The homecoming parade is on Thursday, October 6th. If board members wish to march in the parade, please be in front of Manning by 5:30 p.m. I believe the parade starts at 6 o'clock. Following the parade for high school students, there will be a block party at the high school. Friday night, October 7th, will be the homecoming game at 7 o'clock p.m., and we are inviting all of our alumni to attend the game. And then the homecoming dance for our high school students is Saturday, October 8th.
Exciting. Do you have a question? Okay. All right. No other comments? We'll move to board reports.
Anybody? Anybody? It's always me, isn't it? It's always.
And you too are troublemakers.
Board reports too. I have a SACID meeting tomorrow, which I'm not gonna be able to attend, but, so I haven't had anything happen. Sorry. No SACID updates.
I'm not sure if everyone got the email from IASB about the resolutions report being available. If you guys could glance at it. When you go through the emails on page 13 is the presentation. It's a shorter list this year than it was last year. So if you guys could glance at it and want to discuss anything before we go to the convention, before I vote on anything, if you guys could just look at that. Gads of other stuff. I know homecoming is next week, but it's a busy week this week too. We have Biddy Cheer getting together to perform at this Friday's home game. So they'll be practicing the rest of the week, starting tomorrow. Then we also have a dunk tank at this Friday's game to support Manning, so we can start getting sports in the Manning building So the kids can get into it a lot earlier than later, so go dunk some students and some teachers Friday night. Tomorrow's 80s Day for the second graders at Manning. They're doing their special rotations, and they're all gonna learn about something in the 80s. I did it last year at Manning, and it was fun. Brought me back. Other than that, junior high is working on their initiative of the 3 pillars of community, and the kids are getting little raffle tickets if their teachers see them and all that. So if anybody has any donations to hand out to the junior high, I'm just, pleading out there. Connect with Ms. Quattrone. There. That's what I got.
Do they refer to the 80s as the late 1900s?
No, that was my high school years. The 90s was the late 1900s.
Clutch my pearls. Okay, we don't have public comment at this time, so we'll move to future meetings and events. So there's a SIP day, early dismissal times for students. If you have questions, please contact your building administrators, but it's September 28th, 2022. There's an elementary PTO meeting, October 3rd, 6 p.m. at Manning Elementary. Again, the WHS Homecoming Parade, it's October 6th, 6 p.m. downtown Westmont. The homecoming football game is the following Friday on the 7th at 7 p.m. at Westmont High School. And then the dance will be on October 8th. There's no school on October 10th, Indigenous People Day. And then our next CUSD 201 board meeting will be October 11th, 6 p.m. here at Village Hall. Will not have to enter closed session. So the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn the September 27, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Make sure